Okay, let's jump right into something that really highlights a fundamental challenge we often face today.
Mhm.
Understanding events when you're presented with just wildly different accounts.
Absolutely. It can be tough to navigate.
Exactly. And we're diving into a source today that throws this tension into sharp relief. It's looking at, recent events involving anti-IC actions and the strong reactions from various political figures mentioned in the transcript.
Okay.
So, our deep dive today is based on excerpts from a YouTube video transcript. It essentially compiles these contrasting viewpoints.
Right. So it's presenting a particular argument about what happened, how it was framed, and who might be, let's say, shaping that narrative according to the video.
Precisely. Our mission here is just to navigate this specific source, pull out the key claims and counterclaims it lays out,
Hmm.
and try to understand the political dynamics and the perceived implications according to this transcript. It's really about seeing how this one source frames the whole discussion.
Got it. So examining the perspectives and the arguments presented, but staying strictly within the confines of this one transcript you've shared, not adding our own views.
Exactly that. All right, so let's unpack the very beginning of the source because it immediately sets up this fascinating tension in just how the events themselves are described.
Yeah.
On one hand, the source quotes voices claiming there wasn't any, significant violence.
Exactly. The transcript directly quotes Maxine Waters. It says she stated, "Nobody was shot, nobody was killed, there was no violence."
Okay.
And the source presents this as a key assertion from one side. It's framed specifically as a response to the National Guard being called out. The idea presented is, despite that heavy presence, there was no violence.
Right. So that framing implies a certain level of calm, maybe, or at least not a violent escalation. But then the source pivots quite hard.
It does. It contrasts this portrayal with a very different account of those same events.
And what's fascinating is the specific detail the source uses to build that contrast, isn't it?
Very much so. It goes on to describe law enforcement being pelted by concrete rock, projectiles, and fireworks. It mentions businesses being looted,
Wow. Okay.
and it even details IC members and their families being doxxed, which, means their personal info was put out there, potentially leading to harassment. These actions are presented by the source as happening during the events.
So, how does the source itself interpret this massive difference in description? It seems like it's highlighting a debate about the very definition of peaceful. Yeah.
Precisely. The source explicitly poses the question, is a certain amount of violence or level of violence that is acceptable? Like you are grading on the curve when it comes to their word peaceful.
That really puts a fine point on it.
It does. And it raises this important question the source brings up about what counts as acceptable behavior or protest. It even references a comparison made in the source to a team winning a championship and celebrating. The source uses that comparison, it seems, to question the idea that the actions it described, the pelting, the looting, could be minimized or seen as acceptable forms of, protest.
Okay, so stepping back a bit to look at the political implications the source highlights, it suggests figures on the Democratic side are portrayed within the transcript as, well, trying to deny or maybe minimize the negative aspects.
That's the angle presented. Minimize the negative and perhaps even shift blame for the situation or the response to it.
Yeah, the source points to examples, right? Like Hillary Clinton's alleged claim
Mhm.
that California Governor Gavin Newsom didn't actually request the National Guard deployment, that Trump just sent them anyway.
And the source frames that specific claim by saying it was the first time in 60 years a president made that choice.
Right, and linked to that, the source includes the claim that Trump's goal was supposedly to cause chaos, not ensure safety.
Yeah, and the source includes other instances too. Democrats reportedly stating things were peaceful or under control.
Oh.
It also quotes someone identified as being from the Washington Post, saying Trump is waging war on us as, quote, Angelinos defend their city. These are all presented in the source as part of a specific narrative being pushed.
And the source, it seems, pushes back really strongly on this narrative it's describing.
It does. It presents the idea that these characterizations are, quote, out and out lying.
Strong words.
Very. And it draws a comparison to past controversies involving alleged cheap fake videos. The implication from the source seems to be that, in its view, this denial of violence is kind of like those situations where reality was allegedly distorted.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The source dives into how these different accounts are spreading. It's not just about the events anymore, but the battle over the narrative itself.
Exactly.
It claims Corporate media, legacy media, are enabling the viewpoint that things were peaceful, using that really strong phrase, "don't believe your lying eyes," to characterize the media approach it's describing.
Yeah, that phrase the source uses, "don't believe your lying eyes," it really drives home its argument, doesn't it? It suggests the source sees traditional media as actively shaping perception, maybe not just reporting facts.
Right. And the source then presents social media, specifically X under Elon Musk, as a kind of powerful counterforce to this.
hmm According to the source, X is the, quote, great equalizer.
Like a great equalizer. Okay, why?
Because, the source argues, it provides videos and proof that the source views as directly contradicting that legacy media narrative it described earlier.
I see.
The source even mentions seeing mockery of these media people, of Democrats, on the platform. It frames this mockery as, like, evidence of X's role in challenging what it calls the established narrative.
So the conclusion the source draws from this media battle.
Is that because platforms like X are providing this counterproof, as the source calls it, and enabling this direct challenge?
Right.
Well, this particular narrative from Democrats and legacy media, as the source describes it, quote, is not going to work.
Okay, so let's shift to the predicted political outcome then. According to this source, what does it all mean politically?
Well, the source suggests pretty clearly that these events and the reactions to them as it portrays them are actually only helping President Trump politically.
Helping Trump. How so? Does it offer specifics?
It does. The source claims his poll numbers continue to climb. It cites many polls reportedly showing him above 50%.
Okay, above 50%.
And it highlights one specific poll, the Insider Advantage poll. The source makes a point of noting this poll is ranked A by 538.
Implying credibility within the source's argument.
Right. And that poll apparently showed 60% approval for Trump's National Guard deployment versus 40% disapproval. This is presented by the source as direct evidence of public support for his actions in this context.
And how does the source explain why the public might support that action according to its narrative?
The source links this supposed public support back to the underlying premise it presents earlier, that ICE is reportedly trying to arrest serious criminals. It names things like murderers, rapists, and child molesters.
I see.
So the source implies that opposing these ICE actions, as portrayed in the transcript, puts one on the wrong side in the eyes of the public, which, in the source's view, explains the political benefit it claims Trump is seeing.
And based on all of that, the source makes a rather bold prediction about the future.
It does. It states pretty directly, this situation, these events, the reactions as described within the transcript, quote, will be a campaign ad in 2026.
Wow. Okay. Now, before we wrap up the main discussion on the anti-ICE events, the source includes a brief look at something else, right? A sort of related interaction.
Yes, a quick sidebar, essentially. It touches on the recent apology from Elon Musk to President Trump.
And why does the source include this, do you think?
Well, the source seems to include it perhaps to illustrate broader dynamics, political power, public image, interactions among influential figures that are relevant to the overall context it's building.
And how does the source describe that interaction? I remember the language was quite vivid.
It was very strong language. The source says Musk, quote, startized that war 2 weeks ago, like a pet-lent teenager at a bad time of night.
Okay.
Going after the sitting president, it says, until Trump responded days later. That's the source's framing of that exchange.
And the source's interpretation of the apology that followed.
The interpretation presented to the source is that Elon Musk, quote, learned his lesson. It suggests that if Musk has an issue with Trump, he shouldn't air it publicly, but should, quote, speak to him.
Implying the public spat was a mistake from Musk's side, according to the source.
That's the implication, yes.
Yeah.
That the public confrontation was the wrong tactic and had consequences.
And what does the source predict for their relationship going forward?
The source predicts they'll likely move on from this specific incident. But it also suggests they probably won't return to their previous level of closeness, implying that, from the source's perspective, the public spat did alter their relationship dynamic.
Okay, quite a tangent there, but interesting context provided by the source. So we've covered a lot here. We've looked at how this one source presented these starkly different accounts of the events, its specific framing of the political reactions, the media's role, according to the transcript, and its predictions for the political fallout. Again, all based solely on the transcript provided.
Yeah, and what really stands out, I think, is the sheer degree of difference the source highlights in how the very same events can be portrayed.
Definitely.
And how the source analyzes these various factors, political figures, media platforms, social media, that It suggests influence these narratives and how people receive them.
It really paints a picture of a narrative battleground based on this source's view.
It does.
So, based purely on this source's perspective, which, remember, presents such starkly different accounts and highlights different platforms, showing what it calls contradictory videos and proof, here's something to think about.
Yeah.
How do you, the listener, navigate information to decide what seems credible when you're faced with such conflicting narratives in the real world?